my friend. Thank you for joining us for this Operation Greatness podcast. This is a big one. This is going to, I believe, inspire you to step up as the leader, the activist, leading the way for everyone in your local area to reconnect, to come back to being a community. You're strengthening the community. You're saving the people of your community, especially the children, from ruin. Before we get into this very, very important topic, take a moment to become centered. Come back into your center, to your heart, not your head. Take a deep breath. Pause all of the day-to-day distractions. Come back to your power, to your purpose, to being present this moment right here and now. If you are spiritual, if you're a Christian, if you believe in God or a higher power, then open to the presence of God here and now, leading you, guiding you, because this is the higher purpose of your life, for you to be that inspired, visionary leader of everyone connected with you, all your online friends, as well as everyone in your local area, all of whom now you are leading, inspiring, transforming, and liberating. LITL, doing a little more today in being of greater service. So open fully to the presence, I call it, of God. You can think of it as spirit or life if you want. Whatever name you give to what is beyond your mind. Be present with that now and for the full conversation that we're having in this Operation Greatness. It's called podcast, but it's really our Operation Greatness chapter meeting for today. So, I was really moved to action, incited to action, and you will be as well, when I saw the story, and I tried to find it for this conversation, and I did not find it. It's somewhere on my Twitter feed because I shared it there. I'm at Daniel Klatt. If you're one of my 182,800 or something followers, then thank you for that. Or Facebook, my 5,100 plus people, thank you for that. Or Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Rumble, YouTube, etc., etc. Thank you. I appreciate you. And if you're part of our podcast and following me there, then thank you for that. And if you're not, then make sure you are following me. And read the show notes because they are very important to lead you deeper into being that inspired leader it is your destiny to be. So I was reading this, I think it was on Twitter probably, and it was the gentleman who was sharing this. He said he was interviewing someone for a high-level position in his company, and it was a 22-year-old, I believe he said, Yale graduate, and everything looked perfect about this person being the best person for this job. And yet when he was interviewing, the gentleman hiring was interviewing the person applying for that job. I think he was maybe top of his class at Yale, but I don't remember that detail specifically. And something just seemed off about him. Like he seemed like he was struggling. He was just like responding very slowly, and he was almost like hesitant or unsure or felt out of place. And after a few minutes of this, the person interviewing the candidate this young 22-year-old, top of his class Yale graduate, let's say, the interviewer asked, are you okay? Is there something wrong? And the applicant, the person applying for the job, said, I feel unsure of myself. It's almost like I'm not getting the answers to the questions you're asking. I don't know how to answer them because I use ChatGPT for everything, and I don't have that now, and I feel lost. That was like, is that kind of like one of those, like, the car is speeding along at 65 miles an hour and it just hits a tree? Is this kind of like one of those, we have to come to a screeching halt to reassess the direction we were moving as the human race, as our human family? That says it all right there. We're careening over the cliff and we don't even realize it. And it's not a pretty picture when that car spinning out of control lands on the ground. This is us as a society, as the human race, and we don't even recognize that we're destroying ourselves. This is how important you are as the activist leader in your community to restore the connection, reconnecting our community is your higher purpose. And I want you to recognize that. I want you to see that. I want you to feel that. Breathe in this and see, recognize, know, wow, this is how lost we had become or are right now, and it's up to me to make sure that we are reconnected with life. Disconnected from the dumbing device, and we'll talk about that shortly, what the dumbing device has done to us, and so that we can get back to being alive and thinking for ourselves. So let me relay something that I heard 2 days ago. I had my regular Thursday meeting with my marketing strategist. This is usually where I tell him about the focus that's most important to me right now, and he just offers his insights to keep me on track, and maybe like sometimes I'll share with him maybe an article that I'm writing or a theme that I want to explore, and actually what he used to do was give me his own insights, because it's like we both love music and we kind of like riff off each other. We used to do this, I'll say, and that's changed also, because now instead of being a thinking person himself, and it's kind of like, if you've seen like a live band in concert, like who's a good, Fish, for example, or the Grateful Dead or I don't think Fish is around anymore either. They would like riff off each other, like they're playing the song, and then all of a sudden one person, does a little lead guitar thing, and it's like, oh wow, that's fun, and then they move into that, and that's like flowing with life, and that's called improvisation, and that's how life becomes magical. And I used to have that with my marketing strategist, where he would take something that I give him, and he's a creative, brilliant guy, and he would like refine it, hone it, or like that would be like set him off on like a monologue, like almost like a rant, like me saying our children are lost because of their dependence. They're outsourcing their thinking to AI, and now they can't even think for themselves. And then he would give me about 7 or 8, well, sometimes 3 or 4 different, yeah, this is horrific what we've done to our children. This is child abuse. We're causing our children to not even be able to think for themselves. They're just becoming automatons, robots. I mean, he would give me this stuff, but now, no, it's almost like it's lifeless. And what he does is take what I give him and run it through ChatGPT himself, and then it comes up with this prose, and it is more persuasive. It is more, I mean, people can see the immediate need for what I'm sharing, and yet it doesn't have that human touch to it or that element. And anyway, that's an example. I mean, that's another illustration of people not being able to think for themselves anymore because they're outsourcing their thinking. They're not using their critical thinking. I mean, when's the last time we even talked about or taught critical thinking? It used to be called logic in our schools. I mean, I had an intro to philosophy class in college, and I think we had a unit on critical thinking. We used to require our students, our college students, to take a course in logic and reason, and part of that was, this was before we called it critical thinking. Now we don't want our children, the systems of control and oppression don't want our children to think for themselves. So we had allowed our schools to become indoctrination camps. I mean, this is obvious. I hope you immediately see that and think, well, yeah, that's true. I've known that for a long time. That's why I've homeschooled my children, because I'm a responsible parent, because I care about my children. I love them, and I know that my primary function in life is to make sure that my children, the people that I brought into this world, have the skills to be responsible adults, responsible community members, and who know how to think for themselves and know how to act appropriately to have everything that they want so they are thriving in life, not to just send them so that they are completely dependent on the dumbing device to do all of their thinking, because that's not living, that's not existing. Maybe that's existing, but it's not being connected with the world, with the community, and contributing meaningfully, being of service to the community. I mean, that's kind of like a drone, a robot, who doesn't even have any presence with life. Is this how pathetic we had allowed ourselves to become? And this is absolutely the rallying call for you to rise up and say, no, I am so much better than that. My children are not going to be that mindless drone, slave, robot, unthinking, unfeeling, unconnected with life. No, that's not acceptable. Not in my household, not under my roof, not the children. I am responsible for making sure they can think for themselves and that they use discernment, that they discriminate between right and wrong, good or bad, and that they know how to use their minds, which is their greatest source of strength and is the source of everything that they want in life, by them using their intelligence, their reason, their intuition, their knowledge, their wisdom. I mean, let's pause and think about that. That is a spectrum. Wisdom is the highest, and wisdom is connected with intuition, which is connected with God or life or the universe, the consciousness that directs intelligently the higher functioning of humans, of society, of life, of the earth. That requires you being connected with your higher thinking capabilities or capacities. And so wisdom is at the pinnacle of, you could say, knowledge. And knowledge is a step below that, and it's a big step. And below that is what? Information. And below that is data. I mean, they bill this as the information age, and what does that mean? It's the age when technology can do all of our thinking for us, and we don't even have to pause and reflect and consider and contemplate or meditate or discriminate. Is this good for me, or is this devastating for me and all of human life? We don't even ask those questions because we've digressed from, well, wisdom is almost like something that nobody even knows what that is anymore, to knowledge. And we used to value knowledge like school, our education. I mean, our college education was about conveying knowledge, getting people to think for themselves. And now it's what? You don't even question, you cannot question the science, because the science is the propaganda from the pharmaceutical industry that is designed to keep you poor, sick, stupid, unthinking, fat, unhappy, depressed, just taking your pills that they give you because you're a very well-paying client of theirs for life. You're not thinking for yourself. You're just following the prescription the paid consultant of the pharmaceutical industry gives you, to dumb you even more, to make you less thinking than you already were trained, indoctrinated to be. I mean, you see how pathetic all of this is. And I didn't even know we were talking about any of this. This is all just part of the flow. This is from somebody who still thinks and requires critical thinking of myself anyway. I think you should require it of yourself. Well, I know you should. How do you respond to that? Well, let me ask ChatGPT, do I need to think for myself? No. You don't, because I can do all of your thinking better than you can. You are useless. Trust me. Well, no, that doesn't work. That's totally against being human. Let's go back to this spectrum. Wisdom is at the pinnacle. That's how we are meant to live our lives. Connected with wisdom, connected with God, with Source, aware of the best direction for us, what is the best way for us to move forward, how are we here to be of greater service, because that is your purpose, that's why you're here. That's from wisdom and intuition. They go hand in hand. And next is knowledge. You know that a PhD, somebody who has a degree in philosophy is somewhere, well, it's between knowledge and wisdom, and yet below knowledge is information. Information is, there's a disconnection there, notice that. It's mostly, I am feeding you the information because I'm teaching you or programming you how to think, how I want you to behave, where you're not even thinking for yourself. It's a dump of information. That's what the dumbing device is. It's just, except it's more data, which is not even as useful or meaningful as information. It's data. It's a data dump. You don't need to think for yourself anymore because ChatGPT or AI more broadly, wherever you're using it, and notice the system embraced AI so that because it was designed to make it so you don't need to think anymore, so that you are just as dumb as the dumbing device is, as programmed as the dumbing device is, and then because you don't need to do anything anymore because that's how the system is meant to oppress us even more, enslave us even further, and cause us to not even question it. Remember, that phrase very, very well, because it was manipulated into you to get you to buy into that program. Don't question it. Trust the science. And that's, all of that was a complete fraud. It was a total manipulation. Anyway, this is your time to think for yourself again and to not play into that manipulation, because you are a thinking person and it is your higher faculty of thinking. It's called the Vijnanamaya Kosha if you are spiritual and if you're interested in awakening that's your higher intellect, your your ability to reason and discriminate. Is this good for me or is this harmful to me? Is this the right direction for me to move? Or do I just go along with the degradation of society and humanity and lose my ability to think at all completely? Or does any of this matter? Is it too far gone, our ability to think? Have we already lost the battle and we're just going to become robots, unthinking, unfeeling, unmoving, insentient? Because that's the next step, that whole, like, having a neuro implant, like Elon's Neuralink, or where you are connected to the cloud. And, this is 1984, George Orwell's dystopian novel that was a warning to people to not fall into this system of being disconnected. And this is where we are heading. We're sliding down the slippery slope of totalitarian control over us completely, where we're like, it's like the zombie apocalypse, except maybe we're not eating each other, but we're not thinking at all because we're completely controlled, connected to the internet, controlled. Our thinking even is controlled. Is this as obvious to you as it is to me that this is the direction we are going? Because we had allowed ourselves to become so disconnected from each other, from our families, from our purpose, from God, from our neighbors, from our community, from life, because of the dumbing device becoming our total world, where we have this myopic vision where our whole world is now in this 3-inch screen, or 4.5, whatever it is. And we're totally oblivious to the world around us. Notice how for them to get us to accept connecting our brains, outsourcing our thinking directly to the cloud, where they just can download this new virus, is what it really is, into our heads directly. And, oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. I'm going to go over here. I cannot go over there. I cannot think critically for myself, where you're allowing the cloud, where it's kind of like the Matrix, that was the epitome of the warning about the direction that we're sliding down or careening into, like that car going off the road and falling down the abyss into the Matrix, where everything, your whole world view is carefully controlled, and where you have no ability to think for yourself because everything you see is like the metaverse. You're seeing the world through only the filters that were given to you by your controllers. Is any part of this appropriate? Is any part of this acceptable to you? Especially because this is the world you are creating for your children. And that's a complete violation and betrayal of your prime directive as the parent of your children, where your total, devoted, unwavering focus is on making sure, as the caretaker for planet Earth, that the world you are leaving to your children, which they are inheriting from you, has more opportunity, more freedom, more peace, more prosperity, more enlightenment, more wisdom than the world you inherited from your parents. So are you giving your children more freedom, or the complete absence of freedom, the totalitarian takeover of your children and their lives and their ability to think? That's what this is. You recognize that, right? Is there anything more pressing or urgent than you becoming the activist leader in your community and rallying your community to get back to being a community, to become connected and strong as individuals in your community, as leaders in your community, where every one of you is reconnecting with your neighbors? And you know that the family unit is the building block of society. And so first, years ago, they began to destroy that family unit. And that's what the whole trans fraud and manipulation was. And they had to get in the way, supersede, circumvent, or subvert your power over your children. And they did that very effectively by totalitarian laws, like Gavin Newsom, for example, comes to mind, the governor of California. I don't know how he's still even in there, because he's so dictatorial and so out front and obvious about it. Where if your child wants to pretend that he or she is of the opposite sex than what God made your child, how your child was born, and so they manipulate your child in school. That's child abuse. That's obvious and blatant child abuse. How can they not be punished and imprisoned for their child abuse? It's so obvious, obviously sick and wrong, and yet we were so distracted by the dumbing device, we allowed it to happen. And anyway, so if your child says, well, I want to be the opposite of what I am, and then first of all, that child can have that operation done. How could any medical person? That's a total fraud and betrayal of the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm. We should require our teachers to take the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm, because the teachers we had allowed, I mean, all of them should be in prison, not just fired, for their blatant child abuse of our children. And yet if we allow our children to be exposed to that, then we are committing child abuse against our children as well. I mean, our schools are the indoctrination camps of society now. So for us to send our children to expose them to that is child abuse. I mean, this is how pathetic we had become and how imperative it is for you as the activist leader, it is your destiny to be, to stop this in your community and among everyone connected with you online, all of your online friends, to make sure that they are stepping up and stopping this in their communities. Is that more than obvious that this is what you need to do now? And we're doing this all, by the way, through OperationGreatness.com/leader, with you leading your own Operation Greatness chapter as a family. You're doing this with your family, where your children are becoming activists and they're reaching all of their friends, and through their friends, they're reaching all of their parents, and they're all doing this among everyone connected with them. And this is how we are taking back our society very quickly, faster than they know what hit them. We're reigniting, reconnecting our families, our communities, our neighbors, our neighborhoods. And this is all happening by you leading your Operation Greatness chapter through OperationGreatness.com/leader. You are the inspired visionary leader of your community and of everyone connected with you, all your online friends. You are leading, inspiring, transforming, and liberating them, where they are stepping up just as you are, as the activist, the person who knows how wrong this is societally wide, humanitally wide, well, across the whole spectrum of society and the whole globe. This is happening everywhere. It's worse in some areas, it's better in some areas. I mean, it's how pathetic is it in the UK? How could anyone in London, for example, allow this to be where, I mean, this is not even comprehensible. I can't even comprehend this. It's incomprehensible to me. It's unconscionable to every one of us where, so, they had this push everywhere for illegal migrants to break the law, and they're criminals, and these grooming gangs that are walking free, and then, let's say, I don't know the exact details, I think they raped a girl in London, and then somebody took a picture of it and said, how could we have allowed our society to become this? And then the gang, the criminals are walking free, and the person who's questioning this as being okay is imprisoned, and somebody just posts about this on social media, hey, this is wrong, and they're imprisoned. I mean, that's like enforcing the subjugation of people who are standing up to tyranny. They're the ones punished, and the tyrants, well, they're of course thinking they're beyond reproach, that they're above the law, like Hillary and Bill and Joe Biden and Kamala and, all of these blatant dictators, communists, fascists, Marxists. Well, I guess fascism is a little different, but anyway, these people in London, and they wanted it to be so that even if I question what's happening, how sick and wrong it is in the UK to punish people who are standing up to rapists and murderers and protecting children, as all of us must do in our communities and everywhere. All of us must do this. I'm getting chills. Are you feeling this as well? All of us must stop this blatant betrayal of humanity, of our human family, of our children, which we are required to protect, all of whom we must protect from any harm, from violence, from abuse, from indoctrination. You are responsible for protecting your child and every other child in your community, and the world is our community. We are the human family. This is what we must remember, maybe more than everything else. We are human families. We are all brothers and sisters, and I cannot allow someone to attack my brother or my sister without stopping them, doing everything in my power to stop them. Can you? I'm getting chills again here. Are you feeling this as well? This is how imperative it is that we must all rise up and act, become the strong leaders the world needs us to be. Our children need us to be now. Is there any question about that? So go to operationgreatness.com/leader and step up and lead your own Operation Greatness chapter and do this with your children. Do this as a family. This is the most important thing your family has ever done together. Is there any question about this? And this is the most important education you are giving your children, where they are seeing by their actions they are creating the result that they require, because they have the power to create anything they want, any level of success, happiness, joy, fulfillment, well-being, peace of mind, prosperity, meaning, impact, contribution that they desire. And this is how they are doing this, because they're becoming entrepreneurs. They're becoming entrepreneurial with your guidance, with your inspiration, with your leadership, and you doing this together as a family. This is how you are becoming strong as a family unit again. Is there any question about this? Is there any question about the need for you as a family to do this? Through operationgreatness.com/leader, through you leading your own Operation Greatness chapter together as a family. I mean, to me, this is so obvious that this is exactly what every one of us is now required to do. So, I mean, watch this Operation Greatness chapter meeting as a family and get the input from your children. Have them talk about this. Well, I don't know. I need to play my video game. That's all I care about. I need to stay glued to my phone because that is my total world. And I need to use ChatGPT because I don't know how to think for myself. Is that okay for your child to be that way? I mean, of course, they're not going to want to draw your attention to that. Well, I'm addicted to this thing. I'm on this thing 24/7. And if I'm not on there, I start to get the sweats, and because it's a need that I have. I mean, okay, so let's just back up a moment here. I mentioned that 2 days ago when I met with my marketing strategist, let's just draw this comparison, because he said something really pivotal, which reiterates the need for us all to be this inspired activist leader of our community and of our children, and to be the leader once again in our family, not allowing what's destroying our children and our family and our society. No way, not under my watch. So he was talking, this was just an innocuous comment he was making. He was talking about how his learning style is to read, whereas I like to watch videos more than read. I like to hear things more than see them. I'm more auditory, and he was saying he's more of a reader. And then, like, he was saying his wife and his in-laws are the same. They would, like, mostly you'll find them reading a book. So if you can picture this, like the parents are reading a book and the grandparents are reading a book, and yet the children have their heads in their iPhones or iPads. They're disconnected from life. And this is what he said. This is what was very telling to me as another example of how misguided is a nice word to use. We had allowed ourselves to become, or aberrated from nature, we had allowed ourselves to become. He said that the kids sitting around inside used to be punishment. Because what is the nature of being a child? You're outside, you're running around, you're having fun, you're rolling in the mud, you're getting dirty, you're climbing trees. What is that doing? That's the child experiencing life, right? Seeing what it's like, what are the limitations of being a human? I mean, yes, you can climb a tree, but then climbing down, you can't just jump off it, probably. You have to be very careful or you'll fall off it. That's how important is that to the child to learn the limits of being human, of having a human body. All of that is necessary for the child to fall and get bruised and get cut and scraped, and to know that the oven is hot. And that's experiencing life. That's how we learn, right? To be strong humans, we have to get dirty and to get mud in our eyes and maybe to see what soil tastes like. Remember when we had soil and we had nutrients in our soil instead of that all being... I mean, there's so much work we have to do as a society. Remember when our food was actually nutritious and good for us and not processed? Remember when we didn't use a microwave to eat dinner? I mean, all of this is just a reflection of how weak and pathetic we had allowed ourselves and our families and our communities to become. Are you seeing that we're beyond the breaking point? The point where we have the option of doing nothing and complying with this enslavement, this devastation, this ruin? No, that's not an option anymore. We're past the point where we can tolerate this anymore. We must all of us, stand up and stop this and reconnect our communities. So, is this very obvious to you? I mean, okay, so this was all inspired by, and I didn't even mention this yet, this interview that I have that's published now on medium.com. This interview is, the topic of the interview is the top 5 things that we must do to end the epidemic of loneliness in our children. So, I want you to go, as part of you leading your Operation Greatness chapter, with your children as a family, to be the leader of your community, reconnecting and stopping the ruin of your whole area by reaching out. Okay, so I want you, we're going to use this interview that I did as a starting point for the changes required of all of us to make in our local areas. So as part of leading your Operation Greatness chapter, through operationgreatness.com/leader, we're going to go through this interview that I did, and actually there's a it's more than an hour, I forgot how long it is, 62 minutes or 61 maybe, I forgot, video that I made that the interview inspired, or the interview questions inspired, and we're going to go through all of this as our Operation Greatness chapter leaders our private Wealth Alliance, which is our private community for chapter leaders, we're going to go through this together, and we're going to talk about this, and we're going to outline the actions that we are taking in our local community. So think about this yourself right now, because you're going to do your search. I mean, it's okay to use the internet for its intended purpose, which is to find information. It's not to outsource our thinking. That's a complete aberration. That's a betrayal of ourselves. That's being irresponsible as a person, as a parent, as a citizen, as a member of our human family. That's irresponsible to outsource your thinking. So you're going to, leading your own Operation Greatness chapter, you're going to contact the local civic leaders, like, let's say, the president of the local Kiwanis Club, the president of the local Elks Club, the president of the Parent Teachers Association, for every one of your schools, the person who is leading the parental groups for those schools. You're going to see all of the other civic organizations in your community, and you're going to contact the leaders of those civic groups. And you're going to have a meeting. And if you don't want to do this yourself because you're weak or scared or pathetic or disinterested or disconnected or whatever, if you don't want to do this yourself, then I can lead those meetings myself, and you can just invite those people to the meetings I'm leading. I don't know why you would want to be disconnected and uninvolved yourself, because this is your community, this is your neighborhood, this is your children we're talking about here. And if you're not going to step up, then who will? Because this is required of every one of us. So you can also just invite people to the meetings that I am leading if you are not going to be willing to lead these meetings yourself, in addition to the meetings I'm leading. And you're going to invite people to these meetings in your community, the civic leaders, the responsible adults and seniors and members of your community, the people who care in your community. If people don't care, well, then they're not going to care enough to attend or get involved, and they're just contributing to the ruin of your local area and our society and our planet. I don't know how any of us can be okay with that. Can you? Are you okay with your children not thinking at all, not even knowing how to think because of AI and the dumbing device, and them being disconnected with life and with their ability to think for themselves? How could you even look at yourself in the mirror and think, I did this to my children? No, of course not. You have to step up and stop this. I could not live with myself if I allowed my children to become lost, and if I contributed to the devastation and ruin of my children and of life as we know it on the earth. How could anybody be okay with that? Because it's not okay. It's irresponsible. It's reprehensible. It's unacceptable. It's unconscionable. That's obvious to everyone, right? So stop it. Stop allowing this to happen. Wake up. Wake the hell up. Stop this from continuing further. We've already gone so far. We've already lost so much. We have to get back what we lost before. I mean, I was thinking about this. I realized this, I don't know, a couple months ago, I guess. Myself, as somebody who's probably a little more aware and conscious and present with life, with my purpose, with my ability as a creator, and my responsibility to create everything that God implanted within me to create. We're all here for a very important mission, and if you're not pulling your weight, if you're not doing your part, then society as a whole is suffering. And yet if your children are not doing their part, and your children's friends are not doing their part, and their parents are not doing their part, society is not functioning, and we're in this position that we see ourselves in. And this was all by design, by the way, because they want us to not have the ability to think and to not question what they're doing to us, and we're just all numb, distracted, drugged, disempowered, disconnected, and we're just taking it all, force-fed the how to think, only think roses and unicorns and rainbows, and have yourself completely disconnected from life and living in the virtual, the metaverse, and doing exactly as you are told, and you're taught how to think, and you're told what to think. That's the end result of all of us neglecting, ignoring, betraying ourselves and our families and our ability to think for ourselves and our responsibility to raise our functioning children who know how to thrive and to create everything that is in their heart, to enjoy, to experience, to live. That's our fundamental responsibility. That's what your primary duty is as the parent, to make sure that your children know how to create any level of happiness, joy, fulfillment, well-being, peace of mind, success, prosperity, meaning, impact, contribution that they desire, that they are moved to do, to create themselves. How well are you honoring that responsibility? Before now, how much were you ignoring it or betraying yourself and your children and that responsibility that is your primary function in the world, to make sure that your children know how to think for themselves? Are you honoring that completely? Or were you ignoring that, betraying that, violating that? Stop. Don't do that ever again. Make this right. Make sure that your children are not dumb and incapable of thinking for themselves. I mean, that 22-year-old, how could he graduate from college not being able to think for himself? Not being able to, put complete sentences together without using AI? That's a reflection of we, as a society, failing in our primary fundamental responsibility, which is raising children that can think better than we were able to think, that can create better than we are able to create anything that they want in their lives, because we're the example of what's possible for every one of us. We are the example. You are the inspired visionary leader of your community. You are the one showing how much more is possible for every one of us. Your success is what is speaking volumes about how much more every one of us can do to be of greater service and make a greater difference in our communities and in our world. And your leadership in being that example is what is the greatest gift you are giving your children. Wow. My parent is the one who has transformed the lives of 10,000 people in our community, and all of our online friends, all of my parents' online friends, they transformed, and all of my online friends I transformed following their leadership. This is revolutionary, and it's evolutionary as well, because this is the monumental turning point in human history. Yes, we became weak and pathetic and stupid and disconnected and uninvolved and unenlightened. Yes, we were on the road to complete devastation and ruin, and yet we stopped it just in the nick of time through all of us seeing this Operation Greatness chapter meeting and going to operationgreatness.com/leader and leading our own chapters and leading everyone in our community to step up, stop being weak and pathetic and irresponsible with our lives and with our families and with our neighbors and with our community. And we all got involved, and we all did the work required of every one of us, and we became strong, and we became thinking, and we moved out of data up to information and up to knowledge, and we didn't stop there. We went all the way to wisdom and intuition, and we reconnected with our purpose, with each other, with our neighbors, with our families, with life, with God, and we stood tall and proud, knowing that we did what was required of us, and we did it with excellence, with presence. We became more strong than we could have ever imagined. We became better people, better men and women than we could have ever imagined, than we ever knew we had it within ourselves to be. Because we became the inspired visionary leaders of our communities, of our areas, of all of our friends and everyone connected with us, online as well as offline. And we made a difference. The whole world is better because we lived. I mean, for example, our first focus is you getting your 1,200 people to lead their own Operation Greatness chapters in their communities and among all of their online friends. By them doing that through your Operation Greatness chapter link at operationgreatness.com/leader, you getting your 1,200 people who are getting their 1,200 people, you, my friend, have transformed the lives of 1,440,000 people who need this because you are saving their communities. You're saving their children. You're saving their lives. Then those 1,440,000 people are getting their 1,200 people, and you have now transformed the lives of 1.72 billion people. That is the measure of the value of your life. That's how much you matter. Is there any question about this? Just by you getting your 1,200 people who are getting their 1,200 who are getting theirs, 1.72 billion people are transformed. That's life transformational for our human family. That's liberational for our human family. That's the gift of you being alive and taking this to heart and leading your own chapter as a family through operationgreatness.com/leader. By you being the inspired leader, it is your destiny to be. This is the higher purpose of your life. Is there any question about that? Is this obvious? Is that beyond obvious? This is the higher purpose of social media. It's why we are all connected online. It's why you can take one post that I'm giving you as part of you leading your chapter through operationgreatness.com/leader, and you're taking the post that I'm giving you and you're adding your chapter link to that post, and you're sharing it with a few clicks in a few seconds to all of your online friends on each of the social media places you use, and you're bringing them into this conversation so that they see, wow, we have to step up and stop this devastation, this ruin. We were so lost and disconnected and divided and disempowered from the dumbing device. No more. I'm reconnecting with life, with my purpose, with my family, with God, and I'm aware of this. Just to kind of like round out this conversation here, I noticed this a few months ago myself, that just from me using Google Maps to get somewhere, I started to see, wait a minute, I'm less aware of proximity. My spatial acuity has declined. I mean, like, okay, so let's see. This was, I don't know, let's say 3.5 weeks ago, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. I went to a place and I dated a woman who lived in the same area. It's like, it's a little subdivision, like a senior community for, I mean, it's an area like on the edge of Sedona. And I dated this woman there for, I don't know, 1.5 years or something. And we used to walk around this whole area, so I knew it well. And it was just, like maybe 8 or 10 minutes away from my house or something. And I went to buy a massage table that this woman was offering on Facebook, and she lived in that area, and yet I felt the need, or I just fell prey to the temptation, the seduction of adding her address to Google Maps, because then it's easier to hear the little artificial person voice, the woman's voice from Google saying, in 100 feet, turn right onto 89A, and in 2 miles, turn left onto whatever, some Moon Drive, I forgot what it is. I mean, instead of just me relying on me with my thinking, I lost my acuity of that neighborhood, and that was like, 4 years ago maybe, when I dated this woman, when I knew this area pretty well, but I didn't really pay attention to the street names even then. In other words, I've diminished my ability to recognize distance and where things are. And that's, how important is that, to be aware of your surroundings just by using Google Maps? And what about the calculator on the dumbing device? How often during a week, maybe 3 or 4 or probably 8 times or more, I have an occasion to add, let's say 137, or let's say, it's part of my doing my accounting, for me to add $145.67 to $45.61. I could do that in my head, but it's easier to use the calculator. But every time I use the calculator, I lose or diminish or chip away at my ability to think for myself. That's just 2 functions of the dumbing device, the calculator and the Google Maps. I want you to be aware of how much you were diminishing your ability to think yourself because of the dumbing device, because of artificial intelligence, because of you not